One Ring, if it truly wanted its master, why did it stay with Gollum in the darkness for 500 years? There is a question about Middle-earth's most dangerous object that cannot be dismissed with a superficial answer. The One Ring has its own will. It wants to return to its owner. It carries a fragment of Sauron's spirit. So why did this ring wait for approximately 500 years in the hands of a wretched creature by a dark lake beneath the Misty Mountains while its master Sauron regained strength? Why did the ring not act? The answer to this question lies in the deepest layers of Tolkien's universe. The limits of will, the hand of fate, and the tragedy of a power that cannot serve its own purpose. If you truly want to understand this question, do not forget to subscribe to Extreme Stories, because here we do not settle for any surface-level answers. First, let us set the timeline correctly because there is a common confusion on this matter. Many people think the ring spent 2,500 years with Gollum, but that is not true. The One Ring slipped from Isildur's finger in the second year of the Third Age and fell into the section of the Anduin River near the Gladden Fields. While orc arrows pierced Isildur's body on the shore, the ring silently sank to the muddy bottom of the river. From this point onward, the ring remained at the riverbed for approximately 2,461 years. During this time it had no bearer and exerted no influence. The great majority of the 2,500-year period is this motionless weight in the river. The time Gollum possessed the ring is approximately 480 years, from the year 2463 to 2941 of the Third Age. Both durations are enormous but possess very different dynamics, and each has its own separate explanation. Understanding the manner in which the ring parted from Isildur provides a critical starting point for grasping its nature. Isildur cut the ring from Sauron's finger in the War of the Last Alliance and claimed it as his right. When Elrond and Círdan wanted to take him to Mount Doom to destroy the ring, Isildur refused. The ring was beautiful, precious, and Isildur would keep it as a memento of his father's revenge. But the ring did not become Isildur's faithful property. 2 years later, while Isildur was returning north, he encountered an orc ambush in the Gladden Fields. His sons fell one by one. As a last resort, Isildur put the ring on his finger and dove into the river while invisible. Right at that moment, just as he was about to reach the opposite shore, the ring slipped from his finger. Isildur became visible, the orcs on the shore noticed him and killed him with poisoned arrows. The ring did not fall from Isildur randomly, it betrayed and abandoned him at his most vulnerable moment. This was the first and most important clue for us to understand what the One Ring was. The ring was not a passive object but carried a will that acted in its own interest. So what happened to the ring after betraying Isildur? Nothing. It remained motionless at the riverbed for approximately 2,461 years. Under mud and gravel, in darkness and silence, it waited. To understand this enormous period, one must know Sauron's situation. Sauron had lost his physical form in the War of the Last Alliance. His spirit had not perished, but he had lost his body and needed a very long time to gather his strength again. Around the 1000th year of the Third Age, Sauron reappeared in Dol Guldur in Mirkwood under the identity of the Necromancer. But even this was not enough for the ring to act. It was physically impossible for the ring to rise from the riverbed and go somewhere. The ring could slip from a finger, betray its bearer, corrupt him, but it could not walk away on its own. The ring's strategy was always indirect: to wait for someone who could find it, to corrupt that person, and to reach its master through him. During the more than 2,000 years at the riverbed, there was nothing the ring could do because no living being who could find it had passed there. Here, let us pause for a moment and consider the mechanics of the world Tolkien built. The ring carried a will, but this will was limited. A great part of Sauron's spirit had been forged into the ring, and this fragment desired to return to its master. But this desire did not give the ring the capacity for physical movement. The ring could only move indirectly, by slipping from a bearer's finger, by enticing a new bearer, by awakening the desire to possess it, or by influencing the existing bearer to direct it. The ring's power was manipulation. It was a psychological power, not a physical one. It could trigger the ambition, fear, and desire for power in nearby living beings, but to do this it first needed someone nearby. None of these mechanisms worked at the riverbed because there was no conscious entity there to interact with the ring. Among fish and stones under mud and water, there was no mind that the ring could manipulate. The ring was completely helpless. Middle-earth's most powerful object was no different from an ordinary pebble in a riverbed. In the year 2463 of the Third Age, fortune turned. A Stour hobbit named Degol, while fishing in the Gladden Fields with his cousin Smeagol, was pulled underwater by a large fish. He found a golden ring gleaming at the riverbed and took it out. The ring's effect began instantly. It awoke from more than 2,000 years of sleep and started to seize its new bearer at first touch. The moment Smeagol saw the ring, he wanted to possess it. When Degol refused to give it, he strangled him to death and legitimized the ring in his own mind as a birthday present. This murder was the ring's first concrete effect after its long sleep at the riverbed. It created such a strong attraction that it drove the person next to it to murder even before it was put on a finger. But here the ring's calculation first hit a serious snag. Smeagol was not a bearer who could serve the ring's purposes. He was not a powerful king, not an ambitious warrior, not an army commander or a center of political power. He was a small, ordinary member of a hobbit kind living on the edge of society. If the ring had reached a warrior like Boromir or a ruler like Denethor, it could have found a way to return to Sauron. But Smeagol had no such capacity. The ring corrupted him, but as Smeagol became corrupted, he did not grow stronger. On the contrary, he withdrew inward, was ostracized from society, and finally, after his grandmother drove him out, he withdrew into the darkness. By around the year 2470, this creature now known as Gollum took shelter in the caves beneath the Misty Mountains. There, by a dark lake, eating blind fish and occasionally hunting lost goblins, he began to lead a completely isolated life. It was here that the One Ring's greatest tragedy began. The ring had found a bearer, but this bearer could take it nowhere. As Gandalf would later explain to Frodo, Gollum was a very small and very wretched creature. As long as the ring stayed with him, it would never leave that deep lake. Gollum's only connection to the world was the ring, and paradoxically the ring was severing him from the world. Here we see Tolkien's genius. The ring could not choose its own bearer. It had to work with whoever found it. And Gollum was the ring's worst-case scenario, because the ring's power to corrupt was sabotaging its own strategic purpose. So why did Gollum never let go of the ring? The answer to this question lies in the internal contradiction within the ring's corruption mechanism. The ring would make its bearer dependent on it. It would make leaving it psychologically and almost physically impossible. For Gollum, the ring was everything. His identity, his security, the reason for his existence. He called it "my precious," referred to it as his birthday present. It behaved as if it were a memento that legitimized the murder of Degol. These names were defense mechanisms in Gollum's mind. Every name he gave the ring was a cover that hid the crime he had committed. There was a profound contradiction between the ring's will to return to its creator and its power to chain its bearer to itself, and this contradiction remained unresolved for 500 years. Gollum almost never left his cave. He came to hate sunlight, feared humans, and his connection to the outside world was completely severed. The ring made its bearer invisible, but Gollum used this power not to influence the world but to escape from it. The ring, however, needed a bearer to go out into the outside world, to travel, to encounter Sauron's servants, or at least to approach centers of power in order to return to its master. Gollum did none of these things. Beneath the mountains, in a timeless darkness, he remained suspended together with the ring. Two beings were locked to each other. The ring could not leave Gollum because even if it did, it would remain at the bottom of the cave with no one to find it. Gollum could not leave the ring because the ring had chained him to itself. This deadlock lasted for 500 years. The ring's physical effect on Gollum also showed the extent of this situation. For 500 years, the ring extended Gollum's life far beyond its natural limits but gave him neither health nor strength. Gollum became frail, pale, his eyes grew large from adapting to darkness, and his voice turned into a hoarse hiss. A creature born as a hobbit changed beyond recognition. The ring kept him alive but did not let him live. More precisely, it did not allow him to die. As Gandalf would later express, the ring did not give new life. It only extended what already existed until life became an unbearable burden. Gollum was living exactly this state, neither dying nor truly living. The state of limbo in which the ring imprisoned him was the most painful dimension of the 500 years. Here Sauron's situation must also be evaluated in detail. Sauron reappeared around the 1000th year of the Third Age in Dol Guldur as the Necromancer, but this was not a fully powerful Sauron. His physical form was still weak, his armies were scattered, and he did not know where the ring was. He only knew that it existed and that it would one day reappear. Sauron's active search for the ring began much later, and even this search was indirect. He gathered information through spies, servants, and evil creatures drawn to Mordor. In the year 2850 of the Third Age, Gandalf entered Dol Guldur and confirmed that the Necromancer was indeed Sauron. In 2941, the White Council drove Sauron from Dol Guldur, but Sauron had already planned this. His withdrawal was a trap because he was ready to return to Mordor and rebuild Barad-dûr. In 2951, he openly declared himself. So during the 500 years the ring spent with Gollum, Sauron was not actively searching for the ring either. In the first few hundred years Sauron was weak. In the following centuries, even as he grew stronger, he did not have the capacity to trace the ring. He knew it had been lost in the Anduin, but what he was looking for was not at the riverbed but hidden in a cave beneath the mountains, and he could not know this. Two dark powers, the ring and its creator, waited separately, unaware of each other. This situation was a reflection of evil's lack of coordination. Sauron's power was centralized, but his connection to the ring had been severed. The ring had a will but no capacity for movement. The real turning point came with the ring abandoning Gollum. While explaining this situation to Frodo, Gandalf drew a very important framework. "The ring looks after itself," said Gandalf. "It had betrayed and slipped from Isildur's hand. Then it had caught poor Dégol and he had become the victim of murder. Then it had seized Gollum but had consumed him. Now it could get no further use from him because Gollum was a very small and very wretched creature. As long as it stayed with him, it would never leave that deep lake." And when its master Sauron awoke again and began to spread his dark thoughts from Mirkwood, the ring had abandoned him. Gandalf's explanation framed the ring's behavior as a strategy. The ring consciously left Gollum because it realized it could not achieve its purpose with him. Sauron was growing stronger and the ring needed a new bearer to return to its master. In 2941, during the quest of Erebor, Bilbo Baggins got lost in the tunnels beneath the Misty Mountains and found a ring lying on the ground in a dark passage. Gollum had dropped the ring while struggling with a goblin, but the more accurate expression is that the ring had abandoned Gollum, because it was known that the ring had its own will and separated from its bearer when it seized an opportunity. The ring was now ready. Sauron was growing stronger, dark thoughts were spreading, and the ring needed a far more functional bearer than Gollum to return to its master. Gollum had proven over 500 years that he was useless. The ring slipped from his hand and waited for a new hand on the floor of a dark tunnel. But here we descend to the deepest and most surprising layer of Tolkien's universe. The ring abandoned Gollum and found a new bearer. Yet this bearer was not an orc, not a servant of Sauron, not a powerful warrior or an ambitious king. The one who found it was Bilbo Baggins, a small, ordinary hobbit from the Shire who did not love adventure. And while explaining this situation, Gandalf said something extremely striking. There was another power at work behind the ring, something operating beyond the design of the ringmaker, that is, Sauron. Bilbo's finding the ring was not a coincidence. He had been meant to find it, but this designation came not from the ring's will but from the intervention of a far greater will above it. And if Bilbo had been meant to find the ring, then Frodo had been meant to carry it. This pointed to a power whose name is not often mentioned openly in Tolkien's works but whose presence is felt at every critical turning point. Eru Ilúvatar, that is, the one God. In Tolkien's universe, on the surface there seems to be a struggle between heroes and villains, but at the depths concepts of fate and divine intervention form the fundamental structure of the story. The ring tried to carry out its own plan, but a greater plan defeated it. The 500 years with Gollum was the ring's strategic failure. Bilbo's finding it was the victory not of the ring but of fate. Tolkien was completely rejecting the concept of coincidence here. In Middle-earth, nothing was truly coincidental, and even the most insignificant events were parts of the great plan. Within this framework, Gollum's 500 years with the ring must be looked at again. From the ring's perspective, this period was a failure, but from fate's perspective, it was a necessity. Gollum, by holding the ring in his hand, unknowingly protected Middle-earth. If the ring had reached an ambitious human or an orc instead of Gollum, it might have returned to Sauron long ago. Gollum's wretchedness, his disconnection from society, and his isolation at the bottom of the cave functioned as a prison that kept the ring away from Sauron. And this prison held for 500 years, until the moment determined by fate arrived and the ring reached the right hands, the hands that would initiate the journey to destroy it. This analysis tells us many things about the nature of the One Ring. The ring was powerful but not all-powerful. It could corrupt its bearer but could not fully control him. It could slip from a finger but could not determine where it would fall and who would find it. It had a will, but this will was limited. It always needed an intermediary to move in the physical world. And Gollum was the worst intermediary, a creature completely dependent on the ring, completely cut off from the outside world, unable to serve any strategic purpose. The ring's tragedy was that its own power of corruption was sabotaging its own strategic purpose. It corrupted its bearer so deeply that the bearer became useless. Gollum's own story revealed the human dimension of this situation. Smeagol was once a curious and ordinary hobbit kind who fished on the riverbank and lived with his family. The moment the ring found him, his life ended. The first thing he did was to kill his closest friend, his cousin. Then his family drove him out, society ostracized him. Then he withdrew into darkness, and over 500 years he ceased to be human. The ring physically transformed him beyond recognition. It turned him into a frail, pale, large-eyed, hissing, barefooted creature. It shattered him mentally. It made him a being who went back and forth between two personalities, talked to himself, both loved and hated the ring, and was both Smeagol and Gollum. In Tolkien's own words, Gollum talked to himself because he had no one else to talk to. 500 years of absolute solitude completely split a mind that had already been shattered by the ring. The Smeagol side still remembered the old days, the sun, the riverbank. The Gollum side worshipped the ring and would do anything to protect it. These two pieces had become enemies yet inseparable. But despite all this destruction, the ring could not make him serve its purpose. Gollum was the ring's greatest success and greatest failure. The bearer it had corrupted most deeply was at the same time its most useless bearer. It is here that we reach the philosophical essence of what Tolkien wanted to tell. Evil can undermine itself. Absolute power does not mean absolute control. The One Ring was one of Middle-earth's most powerful artificial objects, but because of its own nature it sabotaged its own plan. Instead of turning its bearer into a means that could take it to Sauron, it turned him into a prisoner rotting in darkness, cut off from the world. For 500 years it built its own prison and became its own prisoner in that prison. And even when the ring finally abandoned Gollum, its plan did not work. The new bearer was Bilbo Baggins, and Bilbo did something unprecedented in the ring's history. He left the ring to someone else of his own free will. No bearer had managed to do this before, neither Isildur nor Gollum nor anyone else. The ring's corruption mechanism proved once again to be less effective against the humble, unassuming nature of hobbits. Bilbo carried the ring for 60 years but suffered even a small fraction of the destruction Gollum had undergone in 500 years. Once again the ring saw its own plan backfire. Instead of returning to Sauron, it had reached the starting point of the journey that would destroy it. With this story, Tolkien said something timeless about power. Even the greatest power is not independent. Every power needs a tool, a bearer, a means. And when that tool is wrongly chosen, or when the tool loses its own will, power becomes dysfunctional. The One Ring was the concrete embodiment of Sauron's will, but even Sauron could not surpass the limits of his own creation. The 500 years with Gollum was the most painful proof that even absolute power is not absolute. And ultimately, beyond all the ring's plans, all its betrayals, and all its corruptions, there was a greater will. Bilbo's finding the ring, Frodo's carrying it, Gollum's falling into the fires of Mount Doom with the ring in his hand. All of these were far beyond the design of the ring or Sauron. The final irony of the story was Gollum himself. The ring could not use him for 500 years, but Gollum's story played a decisive role in the ring's destruction. Gollum followed Frodo and Sam all the way to Mordor, and in the end, when he tore the ring from Frodo's finger at the mouth of Mount Doom, he lost his balance in the intoxication of victory and fell into the lava. The ring was destroyed by the bearer who had been useless to it for 500 years. Gollum unknowingly saved Middle-earth. He became the one who destroyed the object that had destroyed him. Tolkien did not present this outcome as coincidence. As Gandalf had sensed long before, Gollum still had a role to play, and pity and mercy were the powers that determined the flow of fate. That dark lake beneath the Misty Mountains remained for 500 years as Middle-earth's strangest prison. Its warden was Gollum, but he did not know it. Its prisoner was the ring, but the ring did not accept it. And if this prison had not existed, the ring might have returned to Sauron long ago, darkness might have fallen, and Middle-earth's fate might have been written very differently. Gollum's wretchedness had unknowingly become a shield that protected an entire world. In Tolkien's universe, good sometimes came from the most unexpected places, from the smallest and most wretched hands. This was the true meaning of the One Ring's 500-year wait. Evil imprisoning itself with its own power, and fate working silently even in the darkest corners. And perhaps the most important lesson was this: no matter how great the power, the quality of the hand that carries it changes everything. Sauron did not know this, the ring could not understand it, but Tolkien showed it to us with the story of a 500-year wait. Do not forget to subscribe to Extreme Stories,